Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome, everybody who's soon to start coming in. I'd like to welcome everybody to the 8th GAA webinar. And I'm very pleased to introduce Gina Barreto, who has helped organize Mike and Antonio for this next webinar on our Paua pearls, Mabe pearls.
Yes.
And Gina, please join us. I can't see you at the moment, but I'll put in the gallery view.
Yes, thank you. Hello, everybody. Kia ora from New Zealand. Well, it's an absolutely pleasure to introduce those amazing guys, Mike and Antonia, with an incredible experience about farming Mabe bloopers. And for me, it was a surprise to find out that we can produce in New Zealand something incredibly beautiful, quite special. So I'm very excited that we can share the story with Australia, obviously New Zealand, and the world. I think it's a beautiful journey, and I have to say that Mike and Antonia have been very brave because obviously they are coming from their farmer experience to talk now to a gemological audience, but they have been really enthusiastic about learning as well. And I'm pretty sure that they are going to love sharing all their experiences and their knowledge with us. Really, really beautiful.
Welcome, everybody, as you come in. And we'll also introduce Sally Lyon. Hi, Sally.
Hi, everyone.
I should say Sally's in Brisbane for everybody, and Gina's in Auckland, aren't you?
Close to Auckland. I moved to Waikato now, but seriously, it's just, it's technology makes so easy now to interact with our friends and our gemological community. So yeah, let's just to make easy say that I'm in Waikato. I'm in a little town in Waikato, which actually is a very, very rich farming area. So I guess that I'm surrendered for all those beautiful farming stories, and yeah, it's fantastic. It's really inspiring.
That's wonderful. And you're still a member of Victoria, aren't you?
Yes, I am. Please don't change me. I love Victoria. Can't wait to to visit you guys, but we have to wait a little bit. Probably will be a little more easier for you to come to visit us and to say hello to Mike and Antonia. Yeah.
Sally, you were talking about, we'd love to visit you, Gina. We'd love to. We're looking forward to it. Sally, you were talking about a travel bubble with New Zealand?
Yeah, they announced it today, starting 19th of April. There's a travel bubble between Australia and New Zealand, so we don't have to quarantine either way.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
We've got to find some nice beaches where you can swim and there aren't sharks.
Okay.
Well, I've got to say, now that I've been reading up about Mike and his farm and his homestay, he's on my bucket list.
Yes, please.
Absolutely.
It is beautiful. It is beautiful.
Just the water temperature.
Yeah.
How about whiskey before, Sally, please?
After.
Yeah.
So welcome, everybody, as you're coming in. Please use the chat box to chat to one another. If you've got any questions, please put it in the Q&A box at any stage throughout the webinar, and I'll say this again. And we'll answer them at the end of the webinar. We'll have a poll, ask you some questions to make sure you've listened. And it's always good for learning and a bit of interaction. And then we'll go to quick Q&As with Mike and Antonio. Hey, the room's filling up. We'll give them 5 minutes.
We can see that.
So it's my time to spruik the GAA as the publicity officer. I probably should have said I'm Catherine Wyatt, the Federal Publicity Officer for the GAA. So with some housekeeping, please everybody use the chat box to talk to one another, engage one another, and use the question and answer to ask Mike questions. If you've got some questions of tech or something like that, also put it in the chat box, because Sally's looking after the chat box and she'll be able to answer you. Hi, Mandy. Yay.
That's so amazing.
So also we'd like to spruik the website. Please check the website www.gem.org.au for all the latest gemological news and all the latest happenings around GAA House, gemology houses around Australia. All the short course dates and prices will be up there, and you can even buy them from some of the straight online. There's also the GAA shop if you want a lot of gemological equipment. And as members, you get 10% off. So that's always handy. And the short courses, Diamond Tech, for those who haven't done, Diamond Tech is coming up very soon in April. So Diamond Tech is probably only a 6 months course and heavily into diamonds, clearly. And it's a fascinating course. Never was really that interested in diamonds till I did Diamond Tech. There's also the Facebook. There's a GAA forum just for GAA members where you can put up interesting information that you've learned online in Facebook, ask questions of other members. That's really cool. There's an Instagram as well. So you just search GAA or Gemological Association of Australia to find out about Insta, Facebook, which is really good. And that's really, and so there's the shop, short courses, and Diamond Tech coming up very soon. Okay, we'll give them, we're about halfway there.
Amanda has put in May to October in Victoria pending numbers.
Okay.
For Diamond Tech.
Who said that?
Amanda.
Of course. Mandy would know all the numbers statewide.
Yes.
So is there Diamond Tech in Brisbane this year, Mandy? And what about New South Wales?
She's put not confirmed yet.
So get your numbers in, guys. Get your enrolment forms in.
Definitely.
Yeah, if you're interested. I've been running short courses and the course was full, and then suddenly at the last minute you get 2 or 3 people saying, oh, can I sign up? Unfortunately, they miss out until next time.
Oh, no.
All right, guys. So our housekeeping is chat to us in the chat box. Please ask your questions in the Q&A. If you've got any questions for Sally, put it in the chat box. She'll be watching out for that. And we might start to introduce.
Sorry, Catherine, just somebody has said the audio is not clear. I'm wondering if that's a global problem. Can anyone else put a notice in there if they're having trouble with the audio? No?
No.
Mine's clear as.
Okay, everyone's saying it's fine. It must be a localized problem. So sorry, carry on.
So sometimes if you've got an audio problem, it's either your Wi-Fi or you're running out of RAM. So you might need to turn the computer off and start again.
Okay, yeah, most people have said their audio is good, so we're good to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, just while waiting for the numbers, we might get started at 7:05. So you can all read on the screen there. Mike, we've been talking to Mike for the last hour, for a couple of hours over the last couple of days, and it's just been absolutely fascinating. He's got an amazing life and an amazing amount of stories. And he's clearly working very well with the animals and growing lots of things sustainably. Mike also grows sheep for their food, for their lamb. He also grows beef cattle, quite a few.
And chickens.
And chickens.
Yeah.
And an organic vegetable garden as well.
Yes.
So we might try and ask Mike to join us. If you want to share your video, Mike.
So I start the video now.
Go for it. You're in.
Yay.
Okay.
So, Mike, we're so very privileged to have you,
Yep.
and you're very kind to lend your time and your experience to share with us this wonderful knowledge that not many people know about. So, thank you very much from the bottom of our hearts and the GAA hearts all across Australia. We're really thankful, and maybe we'll move on into your presentation.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you, Catherine, for having me, and thanks to the Gemological Association of Australia for putting this on. Special thanks to Gina for all her help in preparing for this. She's made a big effort, and it's much appreciated. So, for purposes of clarity, I just want to tell everybody that in Australia, you call them abalone. Most places in the world call them abalone. Here, the native word for them is Paua, and we kind of get used to using that. So if I'm going back and forth, you'll know I'm talking about abalone. So I'd just like to talk about that. So let's see if we can get this thing moving, get the screen moving. There we go. No, it's not moving. Okay. So we'll talk about the topics we're going to talk about today. I'll tell you a bit about Arapawa Island, a bit about abalone and how they work, and the biology of them. Talk a bit about Mabe pearls and how they've been farmed over the years and a bit of the history of that. We'll talk about our farming experience here on Arapawa, which we've been working on for the last 20 years in Paua farming. One of my lifelong dreams was setting up an abalone farm in California growing up. And I think my first dreams of an abalone farm were in the early 1970s. And I finally managed to get one going in about 2000. So it was a long dream period, but we've got it going now. We'll talk about Mabe pearls and how we grow them, how they're formed, so forth, and a bit about the future, where we're headed. So it give you a few conclusions. At the end, we'll have questions and answers, which is the part I'm probably looking forward to. I really love discussing and talking about these animals and the pearls we're growing. So we'll get on to that. Go to the next slide here. Yeah, we'll talk about Arapawa Island. Arapawa Island was the term Arapawa means downward thrust, and it comes from Kupe was a Maori legend named Kupe supposedly slayed a huge octopus on this island at the entrance, probably to Cook Strait where we live, and so that's where the name Arapawa came from. We live in our businesses here on the island. We get off every week or two, usually, not too often. So that's a bit about Arapawa. We like Catherine said, we do sheep and beef farming, holiday accommodations, of course the pearl business. My wife has a jewelry shop here for the tourists who come and visit, and so it's a busy place around here. We, like I said, we raise our own sheep and beef, our own garden, chickens. It's kind of a real farming thing. And we do a lot of diving here, fantastic diving here. As we discussed with the girls earlier, it's a great place for diving for lobsters and abalone. So we're very lucky to have it all right here on our doorstep. So in this slide, you'll see where Arapawa Island is. On the right, you'll see we're at the northern tip of the South Island of New Zealand. This is on the left-hand side is a little bit more of a blown-up map, and you'll see that we're on the Torrey Channel side of Arapawa Island in a little bay called Bekanui Bay, which is right at the entrance to Cook Strait. And you'll see the the tracks there, and that's where the ferries go through and go between the North Island and the South Island. And as soon as they go outside that channel, just outside us, is Cook Strait, and one of the roughest pieces of ocean in the world, they say. And it certainly looks like it on a big day. The coastline along there is all giant cliffs and you know, boulders, and it's just a dynamic area, you know, and it's like the perfect habitat for abalone, probably some of the best abalone habitat in the world. Some of the challenges of living on an island and working from an island are everything has to be brought in by boat or, you know, or helicopter, I guess you could, but everything that we do is pretty much boat access. We got 3 boats we use for transporting back and forth, hauling equipment, and we have a small dive boat where we do all our diving off of. The mailboat comes twice a week, which we're really fortunate to have that service. Every Tuesday and every Friday, we get a mailboat in. We can phone and order. My wife orders most of our groceries come that way. Any parts that we need, if you know, it's fantastic service in the local area. We can call up if we get something ordered before noon on a Tuesday. The mailboat leaves at 1 o'clock. If it's ordered by noon, the couriers will have it at the mailboat, and we'll have our parts by 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's very good in that respect. Okay, we'll go on to the next slide, and this is a view of where we live down in Whakanui Bay. It's a beautiful day. We're looking down on our homestead. You'll see a boat down there. You see the big shed there. That we grow these animals, the abalone, in these sheds. We've got that shed. You can't hardly see the others hidden in the trees, but we pump water up from the wharf, and it goes underground up to the sheds, goes through our system and back into the sea there. Like I said, we do Paua farming's probably our main income here, and that includes pearl growing. We do farm tours. We do reseeding. We grow a lot of spat for reseeding the wild beds, which we've shipped all over New Zealand at times. So we're a big part of trying to rebuild some of the fisheries that were suffering. So been a big part of that. We also have a shop there that, like I said, where my wife does jewelry sales. We've got 3 houses that we do homestays. So people come out in their boats and stay on a mooring and bring their families in and stay with us for 2 or 3 days to a week usually. And it's a big part of what we do, and it's an enjoyable part. We meet some very interesting people. 20 years ago we started this business, and we've made lifelong friends from this. So it's something that we really, really enjoy. And as you can see, if you look down in the bay, Whakanui Bay is right in front of our place. We've got a nice sand beach, one of the few sand beaches in the Marlborough Sounds. And then just outside those trees, you'll see that's Torrey Channel. Huge currents run through there. So it's got a very diverse habitat because of that. And those currents make a huge difference on what the abalone is. It's all very good abalone habitat in all the Torrey Channel. And as soon as you get farther in past Torrey Channel, where you don't get the strong currents, you don't get abalone. You start to get scallops and different species. It changes. That peninsula sticking out is the mainland. So we're right across from the mainland, and the Cook Strait's on the other side of that. And in this picture, that's about as flat as it gets. It's a beautiful day in Cook Strait. So that's where we're at there. The next slide. This slide shows members of our team. So on the left-hand side, you'll see me. In the middle is next to me is our son Jacob and Sarah, who are twins. They're 22 years old now, just a few years ago. and our son James, who's 19. They're all a part of our team and do they do a lot of the diving, the processing. Sarah manages the sheep and beef farm. She loves her agriculture, so that's her. James does a bit of everything, and Antonia on the far right is she's the backbone of everything. So she's a workaholic and gets amazing amounts done around here and drives us all. So also a part of our team, there's a couple on the island, Brady and Fiona Bowler, who bought land off us 15 years ago and have made a homestead up on the top of the island, and their 2 children. Brady does most of our construction work. If we've got big projects, building a shed or anything, he's a very good builder. You can see that the wharf we're standing on there, he rebuilt that whole wharf several years ago. He's a man of many skills. And his wife Fiona does our processing for the pearls, helps us insert the pearls, and just does whatever needs doing from taking care of the working with Sarah on the sheep and cattle to whatever we need. She's there. In June, July, we go off to Alaska. We bought a commercial fishing operation there 17 years ago. So pretty much our whole family goes up there for 2 months in summer there, winter here, to a place called Bristol Bay. It's the biggest salmon run in the world. And we go up there and do commercial fishing. And that's how we've built our Paua farm, is with the funds of basically that we bring from our commercial fishing there. So it's been an interesting ride. And Brady and Fiona, when we go, they move into our home and keep the water going. It's very important that we have this water going constantly. They can only go maybe 20 hours without water, and it would be absolutely devastating to our business. So we've got backup generators, and everything we've got is backup. So we haven't had any of those things happen real bad. But luckily, a lot of you would have heard of the earthquake in Kaikoura, and luckily it didn't happen here because the whole coastline there lifted up to 6 meters. So if that happened where we're standing on the wharf, it would have been devastating to our business because all our intakes, we lost all our water supply. So anyway, we're very fortunate with that. We'll go to the next slide. We'll talk a bit about the biology of abalone. There are approximately 130 varieties worldwide. They're giant sea snails, and they go anywhere from the New Zealand one is Haliotis iris, which is not a real big species. I'm going to hold up a couple of shells to show you a bit of a comparison of a giant California red abalone and an average New Zealand size. So that's the difference there. They're huge. This is an average size California red abalone, something that you would harvest as a commercial diver, approximately that size. So that's the species I worked on and dove for about 30 years in California before moving here. A lot of people don't realize that that there's cultured pearls going on in abalone. There are a few varieties where that happens. And I think there's about 3 varieties in the world. We'll talk about that a bit more later. We've been working on this for about 20 years. Like I said, they eat seaweed, and yeah, we'll go on to the next slide. Okay, abalone are a mollusk. Well, a lot of people think that they have 2 shells. They think of them as like clams and oysters and scallops and things like that, but they really only have 1 shell. They're gastropods. Like I said, most of the bivalves have, with two shells, what they do is they siphon the water to eat. So as the water comes through their system, they filter out all the food particles from it. Where an abalone is a snail, and they actually grab a hold of the seaweed as it's getting pushed around with the tides, or they crawl to find it if they get too hungry, and they hold onto it and they feed with a little thing that looks like a zipper. It's called a radula, and they'll hold on to it and they just kind of wear away at it with that. It's like a file, and they just file away at it. And it's just surprising how fast it disappears when you put it in the tanks. So most pearls are grown in mussels and oysters. At least 99% of them are. So pearls and mabes grown in abalone are extremely rare. I was talking to Catherine earlier, and I explained to her, she was asking me if I'd ever found a good pearl. And in 50 years of this, and eating quite a few, I've only found one pearl of a quality that you would put into a piece of jewelry in that 50 years in the business. So we'll go on to the next slide. Here's a little of the color difference that you see between a Haliotis iris and the Haliotis rufescens. The Haliotis rufescens is the California abalone. They live on the west coast of the United States, basically from the Canadian border down and all the way into Baja, Mexico. They're kind of a cooler water species, and 20 centimeters is about the size we harvested at over there, where in the bottom you'll see the Haliotis iris, or the New Zealand Paua. The New Zealand Paua, the minimum size for them is 12.5 centimeters, and you see the blue color and the beautiful color of the New Zealand Paua shell versus the California red abalone. The New Zealand Paua is certainly the most beautiful shell or Paua shell in the world. And I think it's probably the most beautiful shell in the world. So it's the one thing we have going for us. You know, they can grow mabes in these other species, I'm sure, but they don't get that blue color that we get, and it's pretty spectacular. Go to the next one. So this is a spawning biomass here, and the spawning biomass shows how they congregate to breed. They're broadcast breeders, so what they do is they get together, and then they just, sometimes one will spawn when the conditions are right, and I think the others kind of smell it, and they just start spawning, and if they're lucky, the eggs mix and they get together and do good. But this is a nice amount, and when we're diving, we go through there and just, you might take one or two that would be size, and most of them would be probably just under the minimum size, because we don't like to harvest them until they're at an age where they're kind of done with their spawning. That's what we like to try to do in this industry. So this next slide's got a picture of some abalone. We'll talk a little bit about the anatomy of them and how they work. You see the respiratory holes on the one on the right. That's a New Zealand Paua, and they've got about 6 holes usually open. Those holes are really important. They allow the water flow through the shell, so they're right inside those holes are where they eat. There in the front of that. Their gills set right. They're mostly a big muscle. They've got a little bit of body parts around the edge. The gonad sits in behind that. I'll show you a picture here in just a minute of a little more of that. But those respiratory holes let the water in and lets it move past their gills, so they get their oxygen, which is the most important thing to them. Here's a little picture of an abalone with no shell on it. So you can see the round white part kind of in the middle. That's where they're attached to their shell. And they grow, that grows with them as they grow older. You'll see the gonad that's where their sexual organs are, and they do their spawning from that. The females will be green and they'll lay quite green eggs. You'll see in a slide in a minute some spawning. And the males will be quite cream colored, where they store the sperm in there. Up in the front, you'll see the eye stalks, and the mouth is right up there. Around the edges, you'll see little feelers that come out. And if a piece of food comes, they feel with those. And if a piece of food comes floating by and touches that, they'll raise up and their foot. If anybody who's probably dealt with abalone, know they can be quite sticky. They must have millions of little suction cups, and they grab a hold of it and pull it underneath, and they can be quite aggressive when they're hungry. So go on to the next one. Okay, and here you have a couple of slides of abalone spawning in the wild. The one on the left is a female, and she's shooting off her eggs. You can see they're going out through the respiratory holes. And a female Paua or abalone can lay anywhere from 6 to 8 million eggs at one time. So those eggs, they look like smoke almost coming out there. But if you look at them under a microscope, there's just millions of tiny eggs, and you can see the yolks in them. And yeah, it's quite interesting at spawning time when we do that to look at them under a microscope. On the right-hand side is a male shooting off the sperm into the water. So that's why it's important to have those aggregations real close together. So because the sperm has to mix with the eggs and to fertilize them. Once they're, I'll go to the next one. This is kind of the way it works. You've got the sperm and the eggs, and they mix together. And once the egg is fertilized, they settle to the bottom. They've got a bit of weight to them, so they'll settle to the bottom. They'll set on the bottom, and in about 24 to 30 hours, depending on water temperature, they'll hatch. So it's quite a quick grow out. Then they go to the tropicophory stage where they're swimming, and that's kind of a prime picture of what they look like. They've got all these little feelers, and they go around and around, really fast. They're just constantly moving. By about day 6, they'll get over to the veliger stage. And at that stage, this is all under a microscope. You can't see this without putting them under a microscope. You look at them and they look like a garden snail. They've got a little trap door, and they look just like a little garden snail. And and if they get disturbed, they'll close the door and they'll sink to the bottom. And then what'll happen is once they settle down again, they'll come up and start swimming. About day 9 or day 10, they start sticking to the bottom, and if under a microscope you can see them. They'll crawl out, and they'll start looking like a snail, and you'll see them crawling on the bottom then with a little foot. And at that stage, they're ready to settle. They find something good to eat, they'll start eating, and they'll settle down. Then they go into that next stage where once they're down, they'll start growing a shell straight out from that garden snail, and that's when they start looking like the abalone we see today. From seeding in the wild, we'll talk a little bit about the pearls. In the wild, we harvest them at 7 to 10 years. 7 to 10 years old. Then we will bring them in. We'll put the pearl inserts in, and we'll grow them for 3 or 4 years. The other thing we do is we'll grow them from seed and the way I just showed you, and we'll grow them for 4 years from a seed, and then we'll put a pearl in them and grow them for another 3 to 4 years. So basically, those animals will be 7 to 8 years in our tanks before we harvest the pearl. I'll talk a little bit here about cultured pearls. Under the CIBJO system, that they under pearl categories, we looked at it, and you can see that they talk about snails with natural pearls in saltwater animals, but in saltwater cultured pearls, they don't even talk about them. That just kind of shows you how rare it is, and just pointing out that it's not really mentioned in there. There's very, like I said, here's some more Sibjo information. It's very little, few references to Mabe pearls in there, and univalves or mollusks. So yeah, it's a new industry, and I think we're all learning as we go here, and I think hopefully one day there'll be more people involved in it. It's a pretty exciting field what we're doing. Here's the 3 species of abalone that they mentioned in the Sibjo classifications of that grow pearls, and that's Haliotis fulgens, which is the green abalone. I used to harvest these in Southern California when I lived there when I was younger, and they grow from basically Southern California or Central California down into Mexico. And they've got quite a nice, beautiful shell, a bit similar, they're probably the closest to a New Zealand Paua shell, but they're a bit green. The shell doesn't seem to grow as fast, and I'm not sure if it's the warm water's a bit too warm, but yeah, they don't do quite as good as these. They grow them in Haliotis rufescens, which is the California red abalone, which I also dove growing up, and I showed you some pictures of some of those. And then, of course, Haliotis iris, or the New Zealand Paua. There's probably been more pearls grown in Paua than any other species that I know of. And so that's why we work at them. Okay. And you can see in this picture, there's a picture of a free pearl. This, a lot of times, is what you'll see when you find a loose pearl in an abalone, is it'll have that pointy shape. And that's when we found a few of those, and they grow up in the tip of the gonad. The gonad's in a sheath, and it must get a little bit of sand or an irritation up in the tip of there, and they'll start growing a pearl that's shaped like that, a natural pearl. And we'll go to the next one. Okay, just for a little context, we'll show you a bit about the wild, or the world production of pearls. And you can see that cultured pearls are grown by the tons. There's Japan with 12 to 15 tons a year. Vietnam, China, they're not sure of that, but it's in the tons. Black Tahitian pearls, 14 tons. This is from 2017. And so you can see how much production there is, where in 2020, it looks like we harvested about 1,500 pearls that year. So that means we, versus, 30, 40 tons grown worldwide, and we harvested about 1 kilo. So it shows you how rare what we do is. It's a pretty rare thing, and we'll never get to where we're growing tons of them. It's too hard to do and takes too long. So we'll go to the next one. Talk a little bit about Maori and Paua. Maori came to New Zealand about 700 years ago, and as most people know, there were no mammals on New Zealand, so seafood was a big part of what they ate. And abalone, or New Zealand Paua, are quite a shallow water species, so they can literally wade out and catch them. And it was a big part of their diet, still is. It's still a big part of their diet. Whenever they have any celebrations, they go out and gather Paua, and it's a huge part of their culture. Their carvings are well known. If any of you have been to a marae and seen some of the beautiful carvings these guys do, it's unbelievable, and they almost always have abalone or Paua shell in them. This one's got Paua shell eyes, but you go to them, and it's just a huge part of their culture. Okay, here we'll talk a little bit about the first, the pioneers in cultured pearls, and they were first known cultured pearls were done as early as the 13th century by the Chinese, and they were blister pearls or Mabe pearls is what they did. And they would put things, I guess, my understanding is Buddhas are quite important. They used mussel shells, so freshwater mussel shells that they grew them in. So Mabe pearls is something that's been around, you know, for hundreds and hundreds of years. So what we're doing is not new science, but it's certainly we're trying to develop new techniques to make it better and, you know, make the nice jewelry for the people who enjoy it. This is a little picture of Louis Vuitton. He was noted in the 1890s. He was the first one to grow cultured Mabe pearls in abalone, and he worked at that. This is in France. He worked on a species called Omer abalone, which is Halios tuberculata, and that's grows in the English Channel along the French coast there. And yeah, I know we met a guy who was farming abalone over there. So we haven't seen him for about 10 years, but hopefully he's still doing well and still doing that. This is something that we're pretty proud of, and this is a piece of jewelry that John Keyes gave to the Queen Elizabeth, and it was a New Zealand Mabe pearl, put in a beautiful setting, grown by a company called Iris Blue Pearls. And Iris Blue Pearls, their founder Roger Beatty is an old friend of mine, and he's our competitor and our friend, and he's very proud of this, and we're proud of him for doing it. And you can see the Queen wearing the piece there, and it's a breathtaking piece, that's for sure. And we'd like to see more at some point, more of those kind of people wearing our pearls. That's one of our big goals. Okay, I'll talk a little bit about our whole process of how it starts and how it finishes. So this is a picture of us in our small Naiad boat that we use for our diving, and with a few Paua. It's free diving only in New Zealand. You're not allowed to use any air. They're shallow water species anyway. They only go out to about probably 10 meters. So most of the diving, and like I said, everybody in our family are divers. The kids are getting better than me now, so it's quite good. I'm starting to spend a bit more time on deck. There's a picture of our dive crew with me as a deckhand. I think it was the first day I was ever a deckhand, maybe. And anyhow, this is real important. This is where it all starts. We go out with these and start taking them off the bottom. And these animals are extremely fragile. If they're damaged, if they clamp down and you pry them off too hard, they'll die. They might be alive for a while, but they'll die within a month or so. Sometimes it takes them a month or two to die. So you go through all the work of putting the pearls in and everything, and we've had up to 25% of them die from poor handling. So it's very important to have people in the water who handle them properly, and especially the guy on deck. They come up. When we're harvesting on the right, you'll see some Paua that are underwater diving, and we're diving and looking at them, and you'll see them sometimes like that former picture. There's hundreds of them in areas, and we go through them, and we'll take one out of every couple of hundred, maybe. You know, you're just picking out the biggest, fastest growing ones, and the others are you're leaving huge amounts of them behind, and that's what we like to see. It's kind of like cutting the grass. You just go by and take the tops off, and that's good management. But handling is the most important thing. We'll go on here. Here's a picture of us bringing some on board. I'll talk a little bit about the management strategies that we use here in New Zealand. We've got a system called the quota management system, and under the quota management system, you own a harvest right, or you're assigned it for the year in some cases, but you're only allowed to take so much out of the water per year. They have to be a certain size. New Zealand is probably tops in the world of at managing fisheries under the quota management system. Where I grew up in California was the biggest abalone fishery in the world, and the whole fishery was so poorly managed that it collapsed. And at this stage, nobody's commercially dove for an abalone for over 14 years there. So I don't know if it'll ever recover to the point where they're going to allow commercial fishing again, or amateur fishing. All of Southern California is close to all fishing for abalone for the last, like I said, at least 14 years. So New Zealand's just got an amazing system, and it's, we're looking at long-term sustainability. There's no reason in the world why we shouldn't be fishing these fish 1,000 years from now with proper management. So that's the way we look at it. We're constantly looking down the road, and we're not thinking about what we're going to make this year or how much profit we're going to make. We're looking at making sure there's fisheries around for our children, our grandchildren, and their grandchildren. And there's no reason why it shouldn't be. And New Zealand is, like I said, tops in the world at fisheries management. And I'm really feel lucky to be involved in it. Okay, here's a slide. On the left-hand side, you'll see I've taken the abalone out of the bag, or the Paua, and I'm measuring it to make sure it's the proper size. First of all, still the same thing, being very careful and slowly taking them apart, never twisting them. If you twist them, they die. In the middle, you'll see a picture of our New Zealand Paua with some pearl inserts. That one's just been harvested, it looks like. You can see how much that's actually grown while it was in our system, because those little round Mabes, those would have been on the outer edge of the shell when they went in 4 years before. So over the 4 years, the shell grows and they lay layers and layers over the top of our Mabe pearls. On the right-hand side, you can see I'm looking at the inside of the shell to check for quality. Very gentle how I do this, and I look in there and just have a peek and just make sure that the shell has good color and quality. We keep about 20%, approximately 20% of what we catch will hold for pearls. The rest go up to Auckland into the live fish markets up there, and so 80% goes up there, 20% will on grow for pearls. Okay, this is a bit more of our farming process. So on the left-hand side, you'll see our growing house, and you'll see these buckets. This is something that we came up with about 20 years ago. Being a diver, I knew how important it was to have water movement, and I was trying to figure out how to make a wave in a tank, because abalone like waves. They like lots of water movement. And we went to a kiddie pool at Hamner Springs, and the kids were quite little. They were probably about 2 or 3 years old. And they had this bucket way up in the air, and it would fill up with water, and it would get so heavy and it would tip over, and it had a counterweight would stand it back up. And I looked and I thought, that might work, So I came home and I got an old paint bucket, and I put a couple of fishing weights on the bottom and got it balanced right and put it on a tank. And first thing I noticed is 2 or 3 days later, the other tank, we only had 2 tanks at the time, we're starting out. The other tank was dirty, and that one wasn't. So I put one on that, and we went from one of the big savers of the bucket is we went from cleaning the tanks every 3 days, probably about twice a week. We'd have to empty the tanks out, flush them out with a hose, and get rid of all their excrement and then refill them. And that disturbed them a lot, which isn't good. They don't like to be disturbed. So now we only really have to clean those tanks about every 6 months. So it's a huge labor saver. And the other thing I noticed is whenever the bucket would quit tipping, they wouldn't eat. And so I finally figured out that the bucket also moved the oxygenated water past their gills, where the scientists used to tell me, oh no, Mike, it doesn't matter. You know, you stick an O2 meter into the tank and it would tell you what the oxygen level was in the tank. And they're going, the oxygen level is good, but the oxygen level inside their shell, I finally realized, was where the problem was. Without that water movement pushing the water, moving it a little bit, they actually became oxygen starved inside their shell. So it's been a huge, huge change for us. On the right-hand side, you'll see a bunch of baby Paua, the Paua spat that we've grown from those little tiny larvae that you saw. We settle into these tanks. These tanks will settle up to, we'll put up to 200,000 larvae, swimming larvae in them. And at about day 9, they go into these tanks and we on-grow them for about 8 months and constantly feeding them. The tanks, you have to clean them out occasionally. Lots of air movement in there to keep the water moving. So at the end of 8 months, you can see these are all crowded on top of each other. Well, you go down there at night, they'll all be crawling everywhere. They like to hide. In the wild, you won't see Paua in the wild, baby Paua, without rolling over rocks because they all live up underneath. But then at night, when we're not there, they do crawl out and they go everywhere. And they're like locusts. They're just everywhere. And then as soon as we come down in the middle of the night into our farm sometimes, and you'll see them, and they're just everywhere on the sides of the tank. You turn the lights on, they just start slowly heading for the bottom to hide. So that's a congregation of them. Okay, here's the tank now. On the left, you can see we're harvesting this tank. We put those black plastic things in because they like to hide underneath. So we put those in there to give it more surface and give them a place to hide without piling on top of each other. So there's my daughter, Sarah. She's taking them out, going into bags. Most of the Paua we grow, these baby Paua, we will use for reseeding the wild, and they go to the different fisheries around the country, and they put them out to sea and to try to rebuild areas that have been depleted through overharvesting. And on the upper right, you see a tank where we've kept some of these for future pearling. So those have been in the other tank for about a year, and then we move them into one of our tipper tanks, and we try to put about 300 of them in there when we start, and we feed them. You can see some little pellets there when we feed them a combination, especially when they're small, of a protein pellet that comes out of South Africa. Most all the abalone farms use these kind of pellets. We feed mostly seaweed to them, but in this case, those are some of the pellets that we use. The bottom tank on the right has 2-year-olds. And so what we've done is we've divided them up after the first year in the tipper tank. They'll spend 1 year in the tipper tank, and by then they're growing so fast that they start crowding themselves. So we'll thin them down to 100 animals in another tank. So it takes 3 tanks to divide out in that first lot. We'll hold them in there for another 2 years, so they spend 4 years there, and in that tank. And at that point, they get up, they're up about 90 millimeters, 90 to 100 millimeters. We take them out and we'll put pearls in them. We'll go through and take the biggest ones sometimes, and you kind of thin them. The slower growing ones will catch up then once the bigger ones are out. So these abalone, where the wild ones, we'll take them straight from the wild and put pearls in them. these ones we have to grow for about 4 years before we put a pearl in. So the wild ones will have 3 to 4 years in our tanks total. These will have 7 to 8 years in our tanks. This is a little demonstration of in an empty shell, showing you how we put the Mabe inserts in. These are a nylon insert that we have molded. We've tried lots of different products with Mississippi mussel shell. We find these are the best things to use for our use. They are made. We've got a mold made, and so on the left-hand side, you can see it. There's one in the back, and that's in the gut pearl. That is usually the most beautiful one that we get. Will be back in the back. It sits in right behind the gonads, back in that part of the animal, and it gets pinned in there, and it's held in. We just past the drill, you can kind of see a little line running up toward my thumb. That's where there's a membrane that attaches along that part of the shell, and it goes down to the muscle. So that, and then it's attached to the shell all the way around that rim where my thumb is. So in order to get that Mabe in, they used to use a scalpel, and they would cut through that membrane and slide it in there. But most of them would bleed to death, them being hemophiliacs. So what we do is we use a bone tool. I devised a technique where I just take this piece of bone that's quite sharp, but not sharp like a blade, and I just rub it along the shell and release that membrane from the shell. And then we can slide the Mabe in behind the gonad in there. And then within a couple of months, that'll grow back on, because it's constantly moving as the animal goes anyway. So, and that technique's been good. We lose very few animals since we started using that technique. The one on the right, you can see the inserts with a stem on them, and we kind of copied. There's a guy named Ralph Brown who used to do abalone farming up on the North Island, and he devised a technique where he would glue pieces of rubber off of an O-ring type stuff, and he would glue it on and then drill the hole and pull it in, because originally they used to try to glue them in. They would glue them in with super glue, and it was really time consuming trying to get it dry and get it ready. And yeah, so anyhow, Ralph came up with that idea, a brilliant idea. Ralph's long since passed, but he certainly came up with a good idea there. These are that nylon, so it's not real brittle material. And so it's got a taper on the shaft. So what we do is we drill just the right size hole, and then you pull it in, and it wedges into the shell and holds it in place. So that's what we do there. Then I'll mention now, when we're getting ready to actually do the live abalone, we start out with, we've got a table set up with a tank. Should have had a picture of that, would have been good. But anyhow, we've got a tank of warm water, and we put them in the warm water. They're coming out of maybe anywhere from 10 to 17 degree water. Usually we're probably when the time we were doing this, it's probably 13 or 14 degree water. And we put them in 30 degree water. And after about 4 or 5 minutes, they become quite lively and get real, they start moving around and get soft. And at that time we take them out, and they're more pliable, so we can push the meat away to do the insert in the that goes in behind the gonad, and also for doing the drilling. And then so we'll drill, and we'll put usually 3 around the rim, 1 in the mouth and 2 along the side where I'm drilling that. And then next slide. The next slide, where this is me putting in the one that goes in behind the gonad. This is the most critical one that we do of it. So only myself or my wife Antonia does the gut part. So out of our team, we have a 4-person team. So we've got one person basically putting them in the tank and putting the one in by the gonad, and then they go over to the person who drills the holes, and then a person that installs the inserts, and then it goes to a person who clips them off, and then they go straight into a recovery tank, and of like 13, 14 degree water to start cooling them down right away. And then they from there they go straight into our tipper tanks, where they spend you know, get a lot of love and care and seaweed, and we take very good care of them. At this stage, it's important to have that water flow. We can't, you know, we left a valve off over one night and lost 600 fish. So we have learned that we walk through every night. First thing in the morning, we get up before breakfast, come down, have a good walk through, make sure everything's working. Same at night, just before we go to bed, we come down, have a walkthrough. So it's real important. It's a real hands-on job, and yeah, we don't you don't want to see them die after you put all this effort in. So we make a big effort to take good care of these animals, and so that we can produce beautiful, beautiful pearls. And yeah, it's we'll go to the next slide and we'll talk about that. Okay, so this is harvest time. This is a great time of year for us. We look forward to it. These animals, like I said, some of them, these are wild ones that we're looking at here on the left-hand side with Mabe pearls in them. These are ones that we caught 3 to 4 years ago, and then we did the inserting, and we've been taking care of them and feeding them and babying them along for the last 3 or 4 years. So it's finally harvest time. So on the right-hand side, you'll see me taking the meat out. So we usually get Jacob, he goes and gets them out of the tanks. We get a little production line going, and you look at the shells, and it's Christmas time. Each one is like opening a Christmas present. You just want to spend time looking at each one, but you know, if you've got hundreds of them to do, you've got to kind of get through them at that stage. And so we ooh and ah a bit, and yeah, like I said, that's probably our favorite time of the year is that time. We'll go on to the next slide. So here's Fiona. This goes to her job up in the processing shed. So she's got here's a picture of her cutting out a pearl. We use a diamond saw, so that diamond it's quite interesting. You get your fingers quite close to it, but it won't really cut you. It's just a smooth blade with diamonds impregnated in it. Those little nozzles shoot water onto the blade to keep the dust down. The dust can be quite bad for you, so you don't want to breathe it. So we've got water sprays on there for that, and wear a mask because it's supposed to be similar to asbestos or something. So we're very careful on that. The other thing, once the pearls have been cut out of the shell, then we send the shell off, and it goes to a shell man who crushes it, and he'll break these shells up, and then they tumble them and make them nice and polished and smooth, and they use them in a lot of crafts. A lot of it's exported from New Zealand. It's a big export commodity from New Zealand. So go to the next one. Okay, so we've got the Mabe cut out at this stage, and so what we do here is you look over the side, and we've got kind of like a wedge chisel in a drill press, and we'll pop apart the Mabe to separate it from the outer shell, because we find it's real important to get that off, because they don't stick that tight to the actual insert. They'll build over it, but they don't stick to it. And we've tried using, like I said, Mississippi mussel shells and stuff, and they'll stick to them a little better than this stuff, so they're hard to get out, but they still come loose. So it's important that we take them out at this stage. So what we'll do at this stage, once they're out, we'll thickness test them, which I'll show you a slide here in a minute of how we thickness test them. And then we use steel wool. We'll clean the inside of that shell with steel wool to make sure it's scratched up and any loose console's a bit loose. And then we fill them with a jewelry grade epoxy that gives them super strength because it bonds to the pearl. Where if you leave the inserts in, which they do with round pearls, it's actually trapped in there. So you've always got that separation layer. We'll go to the next one. So on the right-hand side, you'll see what I mean when I say we thickness test each one. Each one's thickness test and kept with its group of thickness. So at the end of the day, we know the thickness of every pearl that we produce. Anything that's less than 0.2 of a millimeter is discarded at this stage. And you get quite a few thin ones. And the original guys who used to do this used to try to use those thin ones, but they ended up with an inferior product, and it cost them a lot of customers. So we're very careful in making sure we give a really good product that's going to last for generations. On the left-hand side, you'll see a freshwater round pearl that we cut into for comparison, and then you can see one of our pearls cut into, where you have this real strong bond with the epoxy in there. With the round pearl, you've actually got kind of a loose piece in there. It's touching, it doesn't wobble when you shake, but it's quite easy, a lot easier to chip that off and for them to chip away. So we end up with a lot better, stronger product this way. So here we go to the next stage after they've been, on the left-hand side, you'll see after we fill them and ground them down flush, then we put a backing of a piece of shell, of Paua shell that's been machined to a disc, and that goes on. We epoxy that to it, so it's super strong epoxy, and then it goes in this thing that's like a lathe, and that slowly turns. That drill chuck slowly turns around, and then the other is a wheel that's spinning at high speed diamond wheel, and so it cuts it to a perfectly round size. We've got a tool that aligns that shaft when it gets glued. You see those shafts on the right hand side, they're kind of finished there being turned down, but that we've got a thing that aligns that to the center of the pearl, and we glue that on with super glue, and which comes off. You can pop those off later and then smooth the back. In the middle, we're polishing off the excess consulate on them and the dirt and things from the processing. And then on the right, you'll see some finished pearls that are ready for the final, to take that off the shaft, and they're ready to go in a piece of jewelry. And here's a pearl from 360 degree views of them. And you can see what we have. You see the shell on the back of the third one from the left. You get a good comparison of what they look like. They're quite beautiful backs on them. Some of the jewelry they make will have an open back on the jewelry, so that's what's presented on that. So here on the left-hand side, you'll see a pair of A-grade pearls and sterling silver earrings. So that's a beautiful set of, like I said, A-grade pearls, and been a lot of love and care has gone into those, coming up with that. Important at this stage to say we don't put any treatments on ours. My understanding is about 95% of pearls are treated with something for color or shine or things like that, but we do no treatments. We just clean them up, and what you see is what you get. These don't need any treatments or any coloring. On the right hand side, you'll see a kind of a selection of pearls. Okay, here's some bit of pearl comparison. There's Tahitian pearls on the left. You'll see on the top left. The bottom are our black color treated freshwater mussel pearls from China. And on the right upper, you'll see that's one of our blue pearls, which is set in a sterling silver bracelet. I went to the Las Vegas gem show a few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. I was traveling through on my way to Alaska and stopped there and had a good walk through and looked at the whole thing, and I was just amazed. And it's a big show. I'm sure some of you have probably been there, and just hundreds and hundreds of displays of pearls and diamonds, and the one thing I got, everything looked, pretty soon all the diamonds looked like glass and all the pearls looked like, most of the pearls probably were all treated, and yeah, I felt like we need to go there, and at some point we will probably go to that sort of thing to show off what we do, but ours just seemed to be more beautiful, more organic than what was going on there, and that's what I came away with. Although I did find some very nice processing machinery and things. It was a pretty neat thing to see, that whole system. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about the future, where we're going there. That's yeah, we're not sure sometimes. We're expanding our growing area because we're trying to increase our production. So that's in the progress now. We worked a lot on that over the last year with the COVID thing, where we've set up another room with another 98 tanks, so we can grow a few thousand more there. With us on growing the probably a good time. I forgot to mention that one of the problems that we're having is with the wild Paua. We for the fishery's sake, we voluntarily raised our size limit from 125 millimeters to 130 millimeters. Well, we found that those bigger fish don't grow as nice as pearls. So we're growing a big part of our growing babies all the way through. So we need a lot more tanks and a lot more space to reach our goals. So we're in the middle of doing that. We're looking at putting solar panels on the roofs of our sheds. That's looking very economical nowadays to help with our power bills and help with our footprint on the planet also. So it's important that we do those kind of things. Looking forward to this normal travel, that's for sure. Getting more people and more tourists coming in. They're good for our business. You'll see on the right, you can see a tour group at our place, and we just enjoy the people. It's just every one of them has a story. They're mostly small business people who are retired, and it's just we miss that part of the business a lot, and we're looking forward to the interactions that we have there. So the one thing I want you to take away from what you saw today is what we do here is we grow Paua, and Paua is like a religion to us. We love it. We have the passion for it. It's hard for people to understand how something like a Paua can be a religion, but there's very few people that have the religion, I'll tell you now. But we do run into them occasionally, and the people that are just really into what they do, and that's what we are, without a doubt. We grow these Paua. It's all sustainable, the sustainable fishery, the Paua we grow from seeds. We just, we want to do it the right way. All the processing and all the jewelry that we do is locally done by Kiwis. So it's all done in New Zealand, and we've had some opportunities where people came in and wanted to buy all our pearls, and they wanted to go to China and Cambodia and places like that, and have all the jewelry made, but it's just not us. So we've made the commitment that we're going to stick with the people that who've been with us for a long time, and some of these jewelry makers that we've been dealing with and are real craftsmen and love that they have the passion and love their jobs like we do. So the other thing, we're constantly experimenting, trying new things. The unfortunate part is it takes 4 years to know whether it worked. And we've had some 4 years where you're like, oh my God, that was a big mistake. But in the long run, it's been very fulfilling what we do. So, meeting people like the people we're dealing with now with the GAAs, I can't wait for them to come visit us. And you guys should all come visit us. Come and see what we do. I'm gonna turn you guys over to my beautiful wife, and you can meet her and have a quick chat. And thanks for listening to me. And I'll look forward to your questions here in a minute.
That was absolutely wonderful. Hello, Antonio.
Hello there.
Jonas, that was wonderful. It's really great to hear your passion, both of you, and the sustainability and the reseeding is spectacular as well. Is there any difference between the quality you see in the shells of what you grow and the wild caught ones? Can you tell the difference?
Not really. There was a time when we were putting a lot of pearls into the grown ones, and then we got away from it because it was taking so long. You got that extra 4 years of tank use where we could just go out and get wild ones and put them in. So we kind of switched to almost all wild, and now it's a slow switch back. It's 4 years, from the first time. And so we've been into that mode for about 6 years now. We're just this next year, we're going to get our first harvest of those. But we did do some years ago that we went from scratch like that, grew them from seed, and we were getting some beautiful quality pearls. Better textures, certainly better luster. So we're really looking forward to those first harvests, which I think next year we're going to get our first harvest, getting back into the farm grown ones. So
you think the younger ones are
it is an age thing. Yes, definitely. Probably if we're harvesting at 130, if I had my ideal Paua from the wild, if we could take a 110 millimeter Paua, it would probably be ideal. 110 to 120 millimeters. So but it's been fantastic for the fishery, and we love the fishery, and sustainability of the fishery is a lot more important than our pearl business to us. So that's the main thing. We want to see this fishery thrive, and it is starting to thrive. A prime example, Catherine, when we moved here 20 years ago, a good abalone diver here would catch somewhere between 100 and 150 kilos a day. Where today, I'm a bit over the hill now, but the good young guys that are competitive are getting, 250 kilos to 500 kilos a day. So the fishery is fishing way better than it was 20 years ago. And when you swim over the beds, there's a lot more fish out there. So what we're doing is the right thing to do, and we know that. So that's the most important thing.
Well, it's very impressive. Hello, Sally.
Hello, Catherine.
Did you want to say something? Antonio, did you want to say?
Yes. No, I just wanted to thank you all so much. The Gemology Association of Australia, we really appreciate you listening to our story tonight. Thank you, Mike, for doing a stellar job as well.
Finally got through it.
We're not often up this late doing this sort of thing. And, you've seen behind the scenes of what we do here at Aropawa Blue Pearls, where we live and literally breathe Paua around here. We just would love for you to come and visit now that the borders are open. This is really exciting news. And, to come and see our rare, exquisite, lovely pearls. And that would be wonderful to have you all come and join us.
We would certainly love to, and it's on the top of some of our bucket lists. I would
Definitely.
I know I've got a question, and then I'll leave over to Sally. Those, when you're harvesting them, there's all that abalone meat. What happens to that?
That meat goes to restaurants. It all goes to restaurants. Yeah, we usually get an order before we do our. We kind of have people that take that are always on the standby for it. So it goes to restaurants. It'll be individually frozen and go to restaurants.
Thank you. That was a really amazing presentation. I didn't realize how cute those abalones were that they walk around. I think it's amazing. I've learned lots. Thank you very much, Mike. And I'm going to hand over to Sally, who's going to ask you some questions.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. We have some great questions. So this one's from Jill. It's quite a long question. Are these Paua hermaphroditic? I can't even say it. How do you tell the difference between males and females, and do they both produce Mabe pearls?
Yes, they both produce Mabe pearls. You can tell by looking at the color of their gonad. The females will have a green gonad, and they have green eggs when the eggs come out, and the males have a kind of a cream colored gonad. So it's quite easy. When you get good at it, you can just push the meat back a little bit and have a peek in there, and you can tell which are the males and the females. So, because we do separate them during spawning, so you've got the males and the females separated. Otherwise, we've had these incidents where if you get too much sperm, they eat the whole outside of the shell off. So you got to be careful. You just want a few. So,
wow.
but we can definitely tell the difference.
Okay. What is the average thickness of each Mabe?
Our Mabes we have a minimum of 0.2 of a millimeter, and they go up to probably about 0.6. Anything thinner, we discard. We want something that we know is going to last and is strong. So we never get any back, so they must be doing good.
Cool. Colleen has asked, are these pearls wholesaled as well as retailed?
We do wholesale some. Yep, we have in the past. We're looking at the future of trying to do more into jewelry and have that vertical integration where we're having our local jewelers do, but we do wholesale them out to jewelers.
Okay. And I suspect we have a valuer in our midst, because they've asked if I'm trying to value these gorgeous abalone pearls, is there a guide that they can use?
Well, there are a few valuers who value them. Ours generally go from about $300 up to thousands of dollars.
And how do you rate them?
We rate them anywhere from a C through to A to gem to what we call a gem plus. We're working on that constantly. It's a very hard thing learning how to grade pearls, and there doesn't seem to be any set way of doing it. So we're looking at hiring some gemologists to do that for us and help us. But we're constantly working on that.
I think you might have a few volunteers after this talk. And are there many other producers?
Well, right now in New Zealand, there's one other producer, the guy Iris Blue Pearls, and we work quite closely. In fact, we do all his harvesting and we insert his pearls, and then he takes them down, puts them on his farm and on grows them. And we've been that one I was going to mention, that one that went to the Queen. I probably caught that fish that grew that pearl, because we used to do for years we've done all his catching of his wild fish for growing pearls.
Oh, okay. And then you pass it along to him.
Yep.
For cultivation.
Well, he used to do most all the inserting and stuff himself, but I think he found it cheaper just to hire us to do it, because we're on site doing it. And he used to come and rent our facilities to do it and bring a crew, and they would travel, 300 kilometers to get here and come out on a boat. So
wow,
it's probably more economical for him to have us do it. And he, like I said, he's been a friend of ours for a long time, so we've always worked quite closely with him.
Okay, so it obviously takes a bit of skill. What sort of die-off rate would you have after cultivating?
Well, if everything goes good, if we have the wrong people handling, that's why I was trying to talk about handling, how important that was. If we have the wrong person handling them, we'll lose 25% of them in the first month.
Wow.
And if we have myself or the crew that we got now, our children, Antonia, if we're handling them, we will lose, you know, maybe three or four out of 1,000. Over the 4 years, we probably have between a 5 and 10% loss if everything goes good. But like I said, with poor handling, and we learned this years ago, you get the wrong person handling them on the boat, taking them out of the bags, and you can lose 25% of them because they're hemophiliac. So if they just get a little tiny injury, or if they twist them where they're attached to the shell, tear a little bit, and you can't even see it. But they die, and it takes them a long time, like up to a month. They clamp down, and they can stop the blood flow by keeping their muscles real tight around the injury. But eventually they have to relax it, and then they bleed out. So.
Oh, wow. So at the other end of the process, what sort of success rate do you have of pearls?
We think we get about a 25% success rate, approximately. We put 4 in, and we hope to average 1 usable pearl per animal. Sometimes you might get several in a row, like I said, that won't have anything usable in it, and then you might get one that's got 4 beautiful pearls, and those are the kind you really remember. But we hope to average 1. Sometimes if things are going good, we do, but if you know, if we get the wrong inserts, we're getting better at it, but we're working on it. You know, we're just constantly learning, and it's everything you try new is a 4 years before you get the results. So it's
okay. So it sounds like you guys are managing the fisheries quite well, but are there still areas that are overfished in New Zealand?
probably the Chatham Islands is a bit overfished right now. Believe it or not, it's a great fishery there, but some of the quotas were set too high initially, and then, you know, higher than was the what would carry. In fact, this area was when we came to this area, there was 276 tons taken out of our area a year. Today, we're taking 90 tons a year out of it, and that's why it's recovering. You know, the scientists and the people who decided how much each area would have set those limits way too high in the beginning, and they weren't sustainable. So we're getting back to good sustainable levels now, and that's the important part.
Okay. This is a weird question from Isabel. What color is their blood?
It's kind of clear. It's clear. Yeah, you can't see it. In the water, sometimes it'll be kind of like a smoky color, slightly, you might see it, but it's pretty much just clear.
Okay. So that's why the animal can be damaged and you don't realize.
Yeah, you won't see that. You won't see it bleeding. Yeah.
Wow.
If you put them in a bag, you'll see the blood come out and start to form in the bottom of the bag. When you take them out of the shells, they bleed. So you get quite a bit of blood loss then when you take them out of their shells.
Okay. Somebody has seen a business opportunity. Can we contact you for a wholesale value?
Oh, they can email us.
Our email address is on there, I think, at the end of it.
I think Gina's left it somewhere at the very end. There you
it
go.
is. Okay.
Cool.
This is what Antonia gives with the Paua Farm tours. Is she does home baking, and everybody gets a nice cup of coffee and tea and fresh home baking. So
sounds wonderful.
Some Anzac biscuits.
And sometimes we'll have 30 people. So she's got to do a lot of baking when we got a tour of that size.
So that's usually people off cruise ships?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
But we haven't had any of those this year. Yeah, some bus tours we get.
Oh, so buses can still get into you?
No, they come to
Picton
Picton and then come out by boat from Picton.
Ah, okay.
Everybody can only arrive here by boat.
Yeah, we work with a company called Beachcomber Cruises there, who've been very helpful for us, and they run the mail boat also, but they book tours and they do all the tour booking. And
okay.
yeah.
Cool. What time of year do you actually harvest? Is there a set time?
Usually now we're
Now.
just getting ready to harvest here in April, March or
Oh.
April, but we're probably gonna start do a harvest next week.
Okay. Is there a particular reason why it's that time of year? Is the pearl
We're
better?
constantly learning, but they're kind of done all their growing. The water starts to cool down, and they'll start putting on consulin at that stage. So the nacre has been laid down for the year. We
Okay.
think the more I know, the less I know, honestly. so that's where we're at today. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. What's your main pearl market? Do you mainly sell to Australia, New Zealand?
We mainly sell here in New Zealand. Antonia's the best salesman. We've been taking most of our pearls and having them put into jewelry. We sell. We've got a small shop here. In fact, in this slide, if you look straight down that path on the left, there's a little shed there that was the lighthouse keeper lived in that. We've got a couple of lights there that line up the channel, and the lighthouse keeper lived in that little hut. But we've turned it into a pearl shop, and we sell the majority of our pearls out of that shop.
Wow.
Yeah, and over the internet. Antonia's set up a website where she sells jewelry and pearls. So
I will admit I did have a sticky beak at your website, and there were a few things that caught my attention.
oh, good one.
Okay, guys, we might wrap it up. Have we got time for a quick poll? Do people want to have a look at a poll?
Oh.
Yay,
Yeah.
nay? Yes, okay, done. Launching the poll. So everyone still out there, please, here's a poll. It should be on your screen somewhere. You can move it
Thank you.
around
Yeah.
and just see how much you've learnt from these. And I can't answer the poll. Oh, okay. I think it's good to know the poll. While you guys are looking at the poll and answering it, I've got a couple more questions.
Okay.
1,500 is not a lot of pearls. That's a lot of work for 1,500.
Yep.
So that would sell pretty quickly, I would imagine.
Well,
No?
we hope they will. Most people don't know we're here. So that's a big part that we just have to get out to the world that what we're doing.
We're
and
very boutique.
yeah. So I'm sure as it's certainly picking up. We're just getting our production down good and our product, to a good quality. We feel we've certainly made a lot of gains over the last 5-6 years. We've worked quite closely with some jeweler, or one jeweler in particular, who's been fantastic helping us develop our product to make it better for them also. So
Some collaboration. There's some fairs, jewelry fairs in Australia.
Yep.
Coming up. There's always that opportunity. Just thinking ahead out loud.
Yep. Well,
And the insert was nylon.
yes.
Okay, that's
It's a
interesting.
special nylon that they seem to like to cover. We've tried other materials. There's a company in Australia that makes Mabe inserts that we got some from, but these seem to cover better than those. So Empress has used this type for the last 20 years or so. So yeah.
Empress?
Oh,
Wait.
sorry.
Empress
Iris.
is-
Empress was another company that used to grow pearls years ago.
No, Iris. Yeah, okay. And someone did ask, are other Paua shell Mabes treated? Do the other guys, anybody else treat them anyway?
Not that I know of. We've seen quite a few in the shops that were fake, and I think they were mussel shell Mabes that were probably done in China because they sold them really cheap. And yeah, and you can definitely tell they've tried to imitate our color, but every one looks exactly the same, and every one of ours looks different. And if you know what you're looking at, you see it right away.
Mm.
That's really interesting. So they're faking
Yep.
blue Mabe pearls. Unbelievable. And what do you think they're using? Did you say again?
I think they're mussel, probably, they're probably freshwater mussel shells, I would guess.
Okay, well, that's really good. Good to know, guys. Gemologists out there, they're even faking these. I was in Broome 10 years ago and I saw faked ringed South Sea pearls.
Oh, yeah.
I can understand faking a nice pearl, but why would you face a ringed one, you know, with all the imperfections?
Maybe they thought nobody would notice, huh?
I don't know. They'll fake anything, I think, if they can.
Yep, yeah, unfortunately.
Okay, well, let's go through this poll because we're past our bedtime. You're past your bedtime.
I had a nap earlier, so.
So we've got half of us have got that it's all of the above. And yes, it's a univalve, it's saltwater, and it's a gastropod.
Yeah.
Clearly, we all think that New Zealand has the best. Well, almost all. Can a Mabe pearl form naturally? Well, Sally's going to say no.
Yep.
There's a picture on, that's one, that's a natural Mabe pearl.
If I could, sorry, point of order, gemologist speaking here.
Yeah.
If it's still attached to the shell, it's a blister.
Okay.
Once
Yeah.
you take it through the manufacturing process and remove it, then it's a Mabe.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah.
So a blister pearl may be able to form
Blister
naturally, but a Mabe cannot.
Okay.
That's an exam question.
Yeah. Yeah.
For watching.
Exactly.
I'll try to remember that, Sally.
Thanks, Sally.
The difference between a blister and a Mabe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so clearly we know that we're blue and green. Yes, we know that they're hemophiliacs. Yes, it is between both islands, Sally. Everyone's done really well. The wild seas off New Zealand, 4 years. I can't believe how long that is. And 1500. Well done, everybody. You've all learnt quite a bit, I would say, from that. So we'll end the poll. So thank you, everyone, for attending. And thank you, Gina, for organising all this and helping Mike and Antonio.
Yes. She put her heart and soul into it. I'll tell you right now. She did a great job.
I think your passion for Paua has rubbed off on Gina.
I hope so.
Thank you very much, Sally, too. And everyone for attending. Thank you so much for making this a really great webinar for the GAA. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you,
All right.
guys.
Thank you,
I'll
guys.
have that whiskey now.
Visit
Yeah.
us, please. Visit us. We want to see you here, guys.
Yes.
Absolutely. Do a road trip, a water trip?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. We'll treat you very well while you're here. Well, we promise if you make the effort.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
On
Thank
my
you
list.
very much,
Bye.
guys.
Thank
Bye
you.
now.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Where do we get out?